Hello and welcome to another edition of Nation Building. On our program, we examine the political, social, and moral issues in the leadership of the Bahamas. On our program today, we have a very, very exciting show. Not very often we're blessed with the women, powerful women in Parliament, and so today is one of those days. And I'll introduce my guests right after this break.
The concierge service is the best thing ever. Like, it is so fabulous, especially for someone like me where I cannot leave my office, my job to go do anything in the middle of the day because I'm on the radio. The service was so fabulous. The ladies gave me a call. They set up an appointment. They come with their professional looking attire. They're just so cute. And they come here and it was a great experience. It took 20 minutes to switch over to the Alive service. It was simple. It was easy. And they just made me feel so welcomed. They explained everything. They hooked me up with my new phone. They gave me my data package. As you can see, hey. And it was fabulous. It was a wonderful service, but what I really liked best about it was not only did they come here and make it easy for me, but they continued to check up on me. The next day, they made sure that everything was working properly with the phone. I didn't have any issues. The following week, they contacted me again, and I've built a relationship with them. They've continued to check up on me. I feel like I'm part of the Alive family. It's amazing.
Hello, I'm Wendell Jones, and every time I sit down and I watch JCN television, I drink the Jamaica Bahama fruit juice. It's so pleasing to the palate.
I've been cooking Bahamian dishes for generations. I now use Jamaica Bahamas product. The rice is very fluffy, very tasty, and good eating. Jamaica Bahama product is simply the best.
As an insurance agent, my life is go, go, go. But whenever I need a refreshing break, it's Jamaica Bahamas Island Mixed Fruit Drink. Good.
Hi, I'm Debbie Bartlett from GEMS 105.9 FM. The effect that Island Junkanoo Juice Medley has on me is exhilarating.
Hello.
Did you get it?
Yes, baby. I got it.
Don't come home without it.
These arms of mine, they are yearning for wanting you.
Where is it?
Strongback is distributed by Jamaica Bahamas Import and is available at your favorite food or convenience store nationwide. For more information, call 341-4091 in Nassau and 351-8282 in Freeport.
Hello and welcome back to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and today I'm pleased to introduce for the first time on our program the Parliamentary Secretary in the Prime Minister's Office for Information and Communication, and the Member of Parliament for the West End and Bimini constituency, Ms. Pakeisha Parker Edgecombe.
Hello.
Ms. Edgecombe, welcome to Nation Building.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy that you have graced us with your presence. These days we've been pulling out you people from your parliamentary duties to talk to the nation, but I'm sure your constituents and the people of the country want to hear from you in settings such as these, and so we thank you for gracing us with your presence here today. Ms. Edgecombe, you were elected in the wave, some say the tsunami of 2017, and we'll spend a few minutes just to talk a little about that before we get into the politics of it all. But you have had a really interesting history, and so I thought it was fitting that we talk a little with you about that history. You have been well known in the country having served in your capacity as a news anchor in the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas for many years. And so your face has been very popular and familiar to all in the country. But just to talk a little about your background and maybe start off with your education, where you went to school, your early school days and up to college.
Absolutely. Well, I was fortunate enough to be born in the beautiful community of West End at the West End Clinic, Grand Bahama. Schooled at Holmes Rock Primary in my elementary school years, and often also too in the 8 Mile Rock High School. All of my early education came in the community which I lived, which would have been, as mentioned, the Holmes Rock Primary School as well as the 8 Mile Rock High School. Following my graduation ceremony of 1991, I worked for a year at a well-known company, Shell Bahamas, which was also the company that I interned at during my latter year of high school. And in 1992, I decided that the workforce could wait. I wanted to pursue further education, and so in 1992 I enrolled at the Bethune-Cookman College in Daytona Beach, Florida, after being inspired by an older cousin of mine who had attended the institution. Several years after that, I would have graduated in 1996, went back into Freeport to work, and a few years later returned to institution at the Nova Southeastern University, the School of Business and Entrepreneurship, Wayne Huizinga, and got my master's degree in public administration. And as for that, that's basically my educational background, along with a whole lot of training.
Wonderful, other training along the way. And so, after leaving university and attaining your master's degree, what year did you join the Broadcasting Corporation?
In reality, I started out as a summer student at ZNS Northern Service. That would have been about 2 years, if my memory serves me correctly, prior to graduating from Bethune-Cookman College as a summer student there. And following that, I became very close with all of the employees and management and had the opportunity to return there upon graduation. And so that is how it all began for me in 1996.
How did you move from, in those early days, I assume you started out being a reporter?
Yes,
How did you move from being a reporter to becoming a news anchor?
Well, definitely, it's somewhat of an uphill. You know, you go into the field with ENG, you're able to secure news stories, and over time what happens is, I think, a strong work ethic as well as your dedication to the craft ultimately leads to those steps that are higher. Anchoring the Broadcasting Corporation is one of those areas in which you are able to elevate yourself. But a whole lot of hard work, a love for the field that I was in, and definitely wanting to be a part of being change agents, which I consider journalists to be in our country and the world over. And so that's basically how it happens, just a whole lot of work and just having an opportunity to showcase talents further. And
was that something that you wanted to do when you joined the Broadcasting Corporation? Did you look and say, you know what, I'd like to be an anchor?
It's so interesting. No, I never did. It's funny because the first thing that I ever wanted to be was a lawyer, and it went from, as I think any young person would experience, when you're not often familiar with just purpose and your life journey, you tend to want to be a whole lot of things, and then God has other plans for us in many instances. But as for me, my entire life was based, first I wanted to be a lawyer. The second thing I wanted to do was be a stewardess. Actually, a stewardess, because I love travel, and it kind of varied. I played with a whole lot of professions, but ultimately the decision to go into mass communications came only when I went off to college. Didn't necessarily know why I was going to college, but that I wanted a higher education. And when I got there, the decision was made that that would be the field that I went into, which was mass communications.
Did you have any experience in the U.S. while you were?
I did. I had an opportunity, obviously, to work within the school realm as a part of our subject matters, we had to do a whole lot of training with our school newspaper, our radio station, programming, marketing. And I was fortunate enough also to work out of Florida, Orlando, Florida, at a news station there as an intern. And so that would have also been some of my early training.
What station was that?
WPTV.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, it's been so long, but it could be different, the call letters, but it was Eyewitness News, Channel 9 in Orlando, Florida.
And so you worked as a reporter there?
I was more so of a producer. An intern. I worked with the producer of their newscast. I remember her well, Terry Baker, and I was able to do a lot in the, I think they called it the Action Office at that time, which went out into the community and they heard the concerns of consumers who felt that they had been taken advantage of, and they investigated stories and held businesses accountable. And so I would have been just an intern.
Right up your alley.
I like it. I like it. I like to be able to see change and invest in stories and initiatives that bring about it. And so that was very rewarding.
Good. Before we move on, you are married. I know you're married. You have 2 kids.
2 children.
Wonderful. And so you've always been resident in Grand Bahama since
Yes.
raising your kids and your family. Wonderful. Your decision to leave the comfort of being a news anchor in 2012. Tell the nation who don't know, was it something you desired to do and pursued, or for those that just saw you on ZNS reporting the news one day and days later you were gone, you were on a political stage? Was it, share for as much as you can, how did that transition come about?
As I would have mentioned, I think that a lot of times we have plans in our lives that we ourselves as human beings tend to work towards. I must admit that initially I never considered the political arena. I knew that I was a reporter and I wanted to do the best job that I could while I was in that arena. And it seems that over time, information and just people talking started to come my way with regards to politics. And I remember saying at one particular time, that's not for me. I had heard so much about the political arena, oftentimes a lot of negative with regards to it. And, you know, the term often being referred to as politics is dirty is something that I would have heard often. And I thought, well, I don't want to be a part of that arena if indeed it is. But as God would have his way and basic, you know, inspiration in seeing some of our political leaders and those who really stood for country, I became a little bit inquisitive, not really acting upon it, but just becoming more informed about it and trying to find out what was this arena and what did they do and why was it so important to not only our nation building, but the world over. And so when the opportunity presented itself, I prayed about it. And I asked God for guidance. And I am a firm believer that prayer answers things. And I got that answer through prayer. And this is why I'm here.
But just to be clear, the opportunity to present it itself, and I'm sure our viewers are saying, how? Tying the dots, as much as you care to share. Were you approached by a political operative? Did you approach the political party, the Free National Movement at the time led by Hubert Ingram? Or what do you feel comfortable sharing
I think for anything that we do, we often have those persons who see something in us that we may not necessarily see in ourselves. I can't say that it was an intense recruitment so much as it was an opportunity, and as every political party perhaps does throughout the world, they're interested in people who are interested in change. And I had the opportunity to work with the Free National Movement eventually towards that. And all of the things just came together, and I was able to benefit and become a candidate under the Free National Movement.
I noted back in 2012 that your introduction to the people of Grand Bahama it seemed, certainly to me, you might not share that view, and to many other observers, that it was a very, very strategic move by the then Prime Minister, Mr. Ingram. And I say this because I don't know all of the intricate details, but to the extent that the public forms an opinion, and I myself had looked at it, it was strategic because the Free National Movement then was struggling to find its way, that there were many challenges, and the choice of candidates were critical to the party at the time. And when you were chosen, it was extremely popular. I remember watching television, seeing you, you were this bright spark in the Grand Bahama, the FNM's Grand Bahama campaign. People went wild.
It is perception. Many would have said that back in 2012, and quite frankly, some often refer to some of us as political toys or what have you, so to speak. That is a matter that was addressed back then. But at the end of it all, I do believe that there is a purpose in everything.
Sure.
I never felt as a sacrificial lamb or anything of that nature that some people would have tried to refer to some of us as. And whether or not political strategy was a definitive with regards to it, only those who were at the top would ever know that. That wasn't necessarily shared with us.
But for you, it was just an opportunity to serve.
It was an opportunity for me to serve. And I also feel as though every leader and all those that are at the top level in search of something different and those willing to serve, there's nothing wrong in going at those persons and bringing them forward.
Sure. But I highlighted that simply because, and I think the story must be told, that you certainly was a tremendous spark, as I mentioned earlier, in that campaign. And the public, the reception by, well, certainly the party itself, because we were watching television, watching the mini convention or whatever it is that they had when they introduced you, and the reception, you know, the crowd went wild. And not only that, but following the campaigns throughout the election campaign, even in Nassau, in the capital, you were certainly one of those bright spots. Last question I'd ask on that, and on your whole, certainly as a popular news anchor, one can understand you're a very attractive woman and you present very well, always have. So it's not hard to see why people would be endeared to you and to what you represented and you presenting yourself. So when we talk about it being a brilliant political strategy, it's in that context that those in leadership would have seen value to your being involved and being a part of your team to the extent that they pursued you. And so the 2012 campaign, before we move on, once you became a candidate, you went out on the campaign trail. It was a new experience for you.
Absolutely.
Was it frightening or was it exciting?
Both. I think that anything that is new, there's also always an element of fear, but not for a very long time. Very interestingly, going into the political arena with it being all new, I was surrounded by quite a number of people that knew about it. And so a lot of lessons were learned early on, and that fear soon subsided. I always say in anything that I do, once I go there, you know, I do go with a faith that is very, very strong. And so you would often find that I'm not necessarily fearful of what's out there. It's just getting started and moving forward. And so back in 2012, everyone asked the question, you know, why would she leave her job and why would she go into the political arena? And there I sat and stood many a nights just basically looking at what the comments were and just feeling very, very at peace. You know, I remember at one point in time telling our former Prime Minister, the Honorable Hubert Ingram, that I felt like I was floating. And he said, well, you know, continue floating, my dear, and that was it. It just felt really surreal.
Okay, so it didn't last long. So never mind that wonderful personality. There's some fire in there. You're watching Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and we'll be right back after this break.
I've been a customer for the past 2 years, and I will say the quality of the service is very good. During my trip to Andros, I was connected the entire trip, so that was really good. I was able to contact my family members and let them know how the trip was going. We touched land, we're here, so it was very good, and I really appreciate that. And also during times like when we had the storm, it was really good to have that service to reach out to our loved ones to make sure everyone is okay. And I really appreciate Alive for that. And even when there's a little technical difficulty, they always send out a little text message to let us know exactly what's going on. I'm happy to be alive, and I believe in best.
Hello, I'm Wendell Jones, and every time I sit down and I watch JCN television, I drink the Jamaica Bahama fruit juice. It's so pleasing to the palate.
I've been cooking Bahamian dishes for generations. I now use Jamaica Bahamas product. The rice is very fluffy, very tasty, and good eating. Jamaica Bahama product is simply the best.
As an insurance agent, my life is go, go, go. But whenever I need a refreshing break, it's Jamaica Bahamas Island Mixed Fruit Drink. Good.
Hi, I'm Debbie Bartlett from Gems 105.9 FM. The effect that Island Junkanoo Juice medley has on me is exhilarating.
Hello.
Did you get it?
Yes, baby. I got it.
Don't come home without it.
These arms of mine, they are yearning for wanting you.
Where is it?
Strongback is distributed by Jamaica Bahamas Import and is available at your favorite food or convenience store nationwide. For more information, call 341-4091 in Nassau and 351-8282 in Freeport.
Welcome back to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and I'm here today with Miss Pakeisha Edgecombe, who is the Member of Parliament for the West End and Bimini constituency, and she's also the Parliamentary Secretary for Information and Communication in the Office of the Prime Minister. Miss Edgecombe, as we move into this segment and begin to get a little closer to where we are today in terms of what the government is doing, I don't want to leave out for those who have been following your wonderful story of how you entered the political arena in the Bahamas and begin to serve your country. I don't want to just jump to the glory days. After the 2012 general elections, after your party suffered a crushing defeat, and say to our people, what did that feel like? And secondly, as a two-part question, and secondly, how you would have been able to pull yourself out of what even those who have been ministers and served for many years, that, if you will, for lack of a better term, that depressing feeling of having put your all out there and end up short.
I think for the entire party, it was somewhat of a shock. Not necessarily because we didn't consider that obviously losing is always an option when you go in anything that is competitive. But from what we were seeing and hearing on the ground, it didn't necessarily equate with what we saw coming out as the results of the polls. And so obviously that was something that took us aback. Personally, on a personal level, when I lost, I didn't necessarily feel that I had lost, because I found that the entire time that I campaigned and all that we did during the campaigning period was just literally a lesson learned. And so I took that away from losing, and I kind of carry that along with me. I really felt really badly for those who had worked so hard on the ground along with me. All of my generals and those persons who would have taken themselves and put themselves in the forefront, who soon after would have experienced what politics does to many of us in this country, being labeled and further into it just kind of being isolated. And I felt for my community. I felt for those who gave up a lot to walk with me. Many of them who cried after we had lost. Strangely enough, I never cried. I felt guilty for not crying because everyone around me had expressed that emotion, and I couldn't understand why I didn't cry. And as time would go on, I soon realized the reason, because it wasn't time. It was not time for me to be there. And I just took that and I kept moving.
Some candidates I've heard, and you obviously may not share this view, after a loss felt that the people made a mistake. Did you feel like the people at that time made a mistake?
I wouldn't term it so much as a mistake as much as people just exercised their democratic right. A lot of times things that happen we may not necessarily agree with, but everyone has a choice. In saying that they made a mistake, it takes away from that right. I don't subscribe to that. Would we have wanted to win? Yes, we would have, but it just wasn't for us at that time. And I think what the people did was based on what they felt. And I don't necessarily wish to ever say that a mistake was made when we would have preferred us being there because we feel as though we're better at managing the country. But at the end of the day, the choice of the people has to be respected, and I think that is what we did.
Good. And so let's move ahead now. What gave you the nerve to come back, not just to run in 2017, but to accept to go back to the same constituency that you suffered that defeat in 2012?
The people. The people. It is my community. It is the community that I grew up in, and I know the people. And they called for me. At first, I hesitated because I felt as though I couldn't represent them well after a while of going through all 5 of those years and experiencing what I experienced in that break. I just felt that I was not able to do what they needed me to do. And so I started to shy away from that because the last thing I wanted to do was disappoint my community. And having been defeated the first time, I didn't want to go back there and perhaps it happened again. And so anxiety to some degree kicked in because I really didn't want to disappoint the people who expressed confidence in me. But they were my inspiration. They continue to be my inspiration. And especially the children of our community. When you look at what the future holds, it is very, very difficult to go in a corner and pretend as though you don't care and that you don't want to see changes. And so I stepped back out in faith again, and just a firm believer in God and knowing that in all things, anything is possible. And so it was the people. It was my community.
You keep referring to your faith and belief in God. Most politicians talk about God in this country, and it's par for the course. You, your husband, your family, believers, committed believers?
Absolutely. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I am in the political arena, and sometimes I've been referred to as not the usual politician or what have you. You know, sometimes people think of politicians and they think of this really, really hardcore, always just speaking about legislation or policies. But as I would have been referred to during several campaigns as a people's politician to some degree, I don't mind carrying that title because I am about the people. It is nothing that I'm afraid of expressing. It is something that I hold very dear to me. I think that no matter what we do in life or even the political arena, it all boils right back down to people. And I think as long as we stay connected to them, we'll do a good job.
And you think you have a passion?
I have a
for
passion
your
for people. It is my life.
How do you bear the weight, which is a heavy load,
Yeah.
of the demands of your constituents, which is not uncommon like any other constituency in the Bahamas? Our people, it has been said over the years, have been very spoiled in that from the days back in from the UBP days and even before that, when the Bay Street Boys dominated the political arena, before the Progressive Liberal Party was formed, it was well noted in history that those who had resources catered to the people, especially close to elections, in order to win their support. And it worked for a long, long period of time. Some say the PLP went into the same practice for the 25 years they had between 67 and 92. And to a lesser extent, but still, that practice has continued. So my question is, how do you manage that expectation? And you mightn't say it, but I would say it, the unreasonable expectations quite often that constituents in our country place on a member of parliament.
I think that it has a lot to do with our constituents not necessarily believing in themselves and knowing that they are actually the real government. I find, and I would have heard and an experienced person's talking similar to what you're saying with regards to, you know, our constituents wanting certain things at certain periods, and throughout the years, dependency on the politician or the MP to be their last. I think it is a mindset that we definitely have to change in this country, but it only comes when the member of parliament says to the constituent that I am not the one with the power, you are. Every constituent has a voice, and while the MP may have been chosen to convey their message, they have the power to basically silence that voice when they go to the polls. And I know that over time and over the many years, we hear stories about certain things happening. At the end of it all, though, I do believe that it comes right back to the person that you choose to represent you and what they believe, that whether or not they believe in you. You know, many instances would have occurred in which, as a member of parliament, I personally would have had to say, listen, you know, you can do this. You don't have to rely on an MP to support you. You have a talent, you have a skill. Let's figure out how we can get you to base your life on what God has blessed you with. And a lot of talks like that go on. Some people in the beginning may not necessarily be open to that because they're not used to that. But at the end of the day, I am not in this to become an enabler. I wish to see empowerment in my community, because at the end of the day, when you go to your home or you deal with your children, the politician isn't going to be in the house. You are going to have to be the one to know how to deal within your community and to empower yourself. I am only a vessel to ensure that that happens for you and those that you love.
You have some responsibility, weighty responsibility, and want you to say to the nation, want to talk a little about that. I do have to ask you on behalf of your constituents, before we move on to your responsibility, your governmental responsibility. A lot of people, and it's not only in your constituency, by the way, in fact, in many, many constituencies, have traditionally complained about being able to reach their member of parliament, the member of parliament not, I guess they have expectations of them coming to see them. You know, the Bahamian people traditionally said, you come and you knock on my door when election time, and after this, I don't see you. What, Ms. Edgecombe, do you say to your voters, to your constituents, and to constituents across the country about what is realistic about constituents' desire to be able to call their member of parliament for any number of issues or concerns they want to reach them on, and also wanting to see their member of parliament visit these constituency, maybe knock on doors sometimes or have community meetings? Honestly, what is realistic?
That is unrealistic that you would ever see your MP just frequently. And if you do...
why not? Why is
they're
it
working. They're working. As simple as a phone call during a day, you may wish to reach your MP, but this MP also has about 5,000+ people who may be thinking the same way that you're thinking. And they may be calling as well. And I often say, if you spend the majority of your time necessarily answering the calls on a given day, when do you get the work done? When anything comes through, we have to respond to it. And so if we're necessarily on our phones all day, the question always is, when do we work? And I understand and I empathize with those persons who would experience that. We don't necessarily want our constituents to feel that we're out of touch. That is something that we definitely don't want. When we're in campaign mode, yes, we're knocking on doors and asking for your consideration for us to be voted in. But then after we would have done that, you gave us a job to do. And that job is representing you to the best of our ability. And sometimes that representation comes way outside of the community. In order to impact what we do in the community, we have to get out of it. Because we're not just going to get the answers there. We have to follow the paper trail, and we have to ensure that we go to whatever government agency, whatever minister, whatever director, whomever we need to go to get it done for you. And so I say to constituents, not just in my constituency, but just throughout the Bahamas, it is never our intent to seemingly evade you. It's just that we really want to work on your behalf.
So what about having a functional constituency
We've been
offices
mandated to do that.
And having personnel staff to that constituency office so that people can have somebody they can talk to.
We have that.
And also be able to have regular constituency sessions where people can come in to...
Our Prime Minister would have mandated us to have a minimum of 4 town meetings on a yearly basis so that we can hear from our community. Many of us are having more.
Are you all doing that?
We're doing that. We're doing that.
How many so far this year?
For me personally this year, it would have been about 5 or 6. And it had to do with other entities, whether I was joining forces with environmental health or whether I was joining forces with the Minister of Youth or what have you. That's what would have happened. And for me, it can be 8 because I have Bimini and I have West Grand Bahama and Bimini. And the town meeting, unless it's virtual, has to take place in both. But for the most part, this is something that we want to do. And I wanted also to say that we do have the offices. But at the end of the day, they don't want to see the secretary or the person in the office. They want their MP.
But in the interim, this is necessary to be able to have communication, and so you have to do your best in that regard. Okay, so you were appointed. Before we go to the break, can you just quickly, in a minute, explain your appointment that you received once you got elected the Prime Minister?
Absolutely. Parliamentary Secretary for Information and Communication in the Office of the Prime Minister. I am responsible and overseeing the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas, as well as the Bahamas Information Services. Those are the 2 premier entities that I oversee.
Wonderful. You're watching Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock. We'll be right back after this break.
Hello, I'm Wendell Jones, and every time I sit down and I watch JCN television, I drink the Jamaica Bahama fruit juice. It's so pleasing to the palate.
I've been cooking Bahamian dishes for generations. I now use Jamaica Bahamas product. The rice is very fluffy, very tasty, and good eating. Jamaica Bahama product is simply the best.
As an insurance agent, my life is go, go, go. But whenever I need a refreshing break, it's Jamaica Bahamas Island Mixed Fruit Drink. Good.
Hi, I'm Debbie Bartlett from Gems 105.9 FM. The effect that Island Junkanoo Juice medley has on me is exhilarating.
The concierge service is the best thing ever. Like, it is so fabulous, especially for someone like me where I cannot leave my office, my job to go do anything in the middle of the day because I'm on the radio. The service was so fabulous. The ladies gave me a call. They set up an appointment. They come with their professional looking attire. They're just so cute. And they come here and it was a great experience. It took 20 minutes to switch over to the Alive service. It was simple. It was easy. And they just made me feel so welcomed. They explained everything. They hooked me up with my new phone. They gave me my data package. As you can see, hey. And it was fabulous. It was a wonderful service, but what I really liked best about it was not only did they come here and make it easy for me, but they continued to check up on me. The next day, they made sure that everything was working properly with the phone. I didn't have any issues. The following week, they contacted me again, and I've built a relationship with them. They've continued to check up on me. I feel like I'm part of the Alive family. It's amazing.
Welcome back to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and I have the pleasure of being here today with Ms. Pakeisha Edgecombe, who is the Member of Parliament for the West End and Bimini constituency. And Ms. Edgecombe she's a Parliamentary Secretary for Information and Communication, and she has a weighty responsibility, having responsibility for the nation's oldest broadcasting station owned by the government, which is ZNES, the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas. Talking about ZNES, Madam PS, the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas have been known for almost forever to be a thorny issue with the public. Whoever is in government, whoever is in opposition, always, including your party when it was in opposition, accuse whoever is in government of using the Broadcasting Corporation to spread its propaganda and whatever, and use it as a tool for information. You're a God-fearing woman, a decent woman. You're not a traditional politician that gets in the mud. What are you? What is your, tell the people of the Bahamas, what is your intention and your government's intention in causing the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas to be seen by the public as being a fair and unbiased entity?
You would have mentioned the fact that over the years, many refer to it as a propaganda machine. Know that one of the first things that the nation's chief indicated when we came into office was that he no longer wished for it to be that way. And perception is a serious thing. It is something that we have struggled with for years with regards to the government, and the government of the day being in control of a broadcast station. We do not turn a deaf ear to what the public has to say relative to our coverage of news and information. It is something that we take seriously. We do believe that in the field of communication, particularly journalism, there is no room for biasness. And this is something that management and the board actively today is trying to ensure doesn't take place in the future. Is it hard? Yes, it is. Because throughout the years, you know, ZNS would have been used to some degree as a political tool to get the message out of each party. But what we're doing in this day is coming together, identifying that there is a problem.
And to be sure, your party is guilty of doing the same thing.
Successive governments have used ZNS to their advantage. Both the PLP, the FNM has used it to their advantage. And you would look at it and think, well, if you have a broadcasting corporation, why not promote our agenda? There's not necessarily anything wrong with promoting your agenda. However, in the field, there has to be a balance.
But not the party's agenda, though.
The party's agenda necessarily comes through that as well, you know,
But
that's
the problem that people
This is
have.
what I'm trying to say. The problem would have been that the different parties would have taken advantage of a tool that they had at their disposal.
Right, and I'm simply saying, are you willing with your
we not only willing, we have begun that.
Yeah,
It
are you
has
committing
started.
to the Bahamian people today that under your watch, they can be assured that the Broadcasting Corporation will not be used?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, right now, what we are seeing is, to some degree, you have both F&M saying that it's the PLP saying it's an F&M thing. So at the end of the day, if both are saying the other is getting played, then we're getting there to the balance. We're getting there to the balance. Our main objective is to have a broadcast facility that is a professional environment in which our staff can flourish with their talents and their skills, and to serve the Bahamian public with a professional attitude. We're not necessarily in this anymore of being used as a propaganda machine, and it is something that we would have expressed to our very own in the beginning, that we will not be used as a propaganda machine.
Okay, well, the people will continue to watch to see,
and they will see the transformation.
if your government is living up to its word on that. Is the Broadcasting Corporation, is there still plans for making it a public broadcast
Absolutely.
station?
It's the mandate, and that is what we're working towards right now. With the PBS system, we move more away from sensationalism and more towards informing our country and our citizenry of our stories and our history, and being able to have programming that actually educates and have our people to know about truth. I think for a very, very long time, as you would have mentioned, politics has played a role in which whenever a government would come in, they wouldn't necessarily identify what the next government did. And it is an injustice to our country when that happens. We're not hurting anyone but ourselves when we don't tell the truth and history as it unfolds.
Okay, and just to be clear, should the people of the Bahamas expect the Broadcasting Corporation to be converted to a public broadcast station before the end of this term?
We're working very hard towards that. Can it be done? Yes. Whether or not we're going to have any obstacles along the way, we don't know. But the very intent is to achieve a PBS system in this 5-year period, which we have been mandated.
But that would be a feather in your hat. Wouldn't you want to push very hard? You still have almost 4 years to go.
And that's what we're doing.
So
I'm not making any promise at this point. But what I can say is that we are working towards the mandate. Will we achieve it? That remains to be seen, but we're definitely working towards it.
And you don't think almost 4 years?
I think it's a very long time.
Okay.
And I think it can be achieved.
Any plans for BIS?
The Bahamas Information Services is also mandated as the primary PR machinery for the government. Our plan is to utilize this service in a more, we want to expand it. I find that for a very long time, BIS has been looked at as just a mere information system without necessarily being equipped with the necessary tools. And we're looking forward to promoting that entity more, because somewhere along the way it got lost.
Okay, and before we move on, both of those entities, I assume, are headed by capable people in order to get whatever it is that you wish to get done. So who are the persons heading both of those organizations?
At ZNS, which is the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas, we're led by Kaylisa DeVille Isaacs, who serves as the general manager. The chairman of our board is Mr. Mike Smith, as well as BIS is headed by Mr. Kevin Harris, who is well known in the media circuit.
And you think that team is capable of getting the job done?
I know they are.
Okay. The 2017 general election showed that in spite of significant wave in the general elections broadly, the people of West End proper, your birthplace and hometown, I think that's the one thing we do share in common, that we both were born in the same clinic, same place. Beautiful, wonderful city. The people of West End proper still did not, those polls in there still did not you didn't win those polls. You won the constituency by a good margin, and comfortably so. I'm raising that because I'm just asking, have you thought about, and is there any hope, because they did this to David Wallace, the MP that won, the only other FNM that got that seat was in another wave in 1997. And I'm saying, do you think that you are able to, and do you have plans to impress the people of West End proper sufficiently to cause them, for the first time in the history of our country, next election to be able to vote for you based on your performance?
You said it. Based on my performance, that is what I wish for them to vote on.
And you feel confident that you're going to be doing enough to win them over?
We're working towards it. We're working towards it. The intent is to demonstrate that while West End proper may not have necessarily supported me, that I will support them, and I will ensure that that community benefits just as Bimini would. In the end, performance will determine whether or not I return.
Is there any particular plans that you have for that area in particular? Because we know, and I'm raising this because on behalf of the people of West End,
yes,
it is a place that has a great history.
Yes.
Remember the days of Jacktar Village. Remember the days when West End was the place in Grand Bahama.
Yeah.
And you have the privilege of seeking to resurrect that place. It is really in a challenging state, and has been so for a while. So that's not your fault.
Right.
But do you have any? Is there any of the plans that you have that you're willing to share with the nation or with the people?
It's just going to take a concerted effort. Right now, the corporate sector will be very instrumental. I don't know whether or not you're aware, but we're ushering a major development into that area at the tune of some $2.5 billion plus. That is going to revitalize West End. It is as a result of foreign direct investment. But on the outside of that, that is going to come, and this is something that we are going to embrace. But outside of that project, what we're saying to our people on the ground in the West End is that you too have to use your community to ensure your growth and development. So what we're going in there and what we're doing is we're listening to the people. Nobody knows West End like those that live there. And what we're hearing from West End is what their needs are, whether it has to be what they believe to be the return of the government dock so that the channel can be dredged and yachts and boaters can come through that and kind of revitalize their sector of that community, whether it be a community center for our young people who does not necessarily have anything to do with their time. These are some of the things that the people are calling for, and that is something that I will continue to voice in Parliament. Like I said, nobody knows the community like those that live there. All we're doing is listening and answering their call.
And so you're working feverishly to get
Absolutely.
the funding and
the
what
funding,
is necessary to
the
not just voice it, but to get it done?
The funding, the manpower, the belief in community, and knowing that we can do it together.
Before we move on quickly, as we get ready to wrap up, the project that you mentioned, do you want to put a little meat on those bones for me and for the people of West End? What
Actually,
exactly?
A Canadian-based company, Skyline, has come into our community with the plan of basically bringing forward a major hotel property that's inclusive of not only a hotel brand, but a major golf course and what they're terming as a mega marina. We do believe that this is going to bring a significant amount of jobs. Already we would have had a town meeting in West End. We're hoping that we are very, very close to signing a heads of agreement. And we believe that with this project, there is a tremendous area for spin-off businesses and for our people to be employed. During that town meeting, the representative for the developers would have indicated that they are all about competing not with the Bahamas, but with the Florida market. And being so close to Palm Beach, we believe that this is a right measure. And we think we're going to really benefit significantly.
How soon should the people expect a project to start?
At that town meeting, it's only a matter of days right after the heads of agreement is signed. I do not wish to disclose that. However, it will be noted, and I think that we're going to benefit significantly. But again, the rebuilding of any community is not just going to lie with one sector. All of us have to come together to ensure.
Great. Let's quickly move on to your government. A leading newspaper in our country recently, the Nassau Guardian, released poll numbers that showed that only 20% of voters in the country would vote for your party today if elections were held. And my question to you is, what is driving the high level of voter discontent in the country? And your party just took office, just over a year ago. That seems unprecedented. What say you?
We're making the hard decisions. And anything that comes with, or that is needed for change, isn't always accepted right off the bat. We're making the decisions that we should have made years ago. And I think that while the citizenry may not necessarily be comfortable with those decisions at this point in time, they will know that what we are doing is in the best interest of this country. We value their opinions and we hear their concerns, but they would have elected us to do a job, and we take that very seriously. Our intent is not to alienate our population. We are here to ensure that there is a country moving forward, and sometimes that means making hard decisions which we may not necessarily like, but we will benefit from. And
you are, as an organization, fully prepared for the consequence if there is?
We say it every day.
Okay.
This is not about necessarily winning an election or a vote. This is about ensuring that at the end of the day, moving forward, we have a country that can be sustained, that is strong and recognized the world over. You would have heard in reading, you would know that we have a serious problem with the financing and the management, the fiscal management of our country. That has to change if we wish to have one.
Okay, and my last question for you today is your party's decision to increase value-added tax in the recent budget presentation by 60% is not sitting well with voters in the country. What assurances can you give to residents of West End and to the country at large that while you talked about earlier this being tough, you having to make tough decisions, your party has, and your Minister of Finance has stated clearly that the sacrifice that the people of the country must make now will guarantee a balanced budget in 3 years. Are you, as a key member of that organization, willing to commit to the voters of the country that they can count on you to hold your government accountable to living up to that promise?
You say 60%, we would have increased taxes by 60%.
Yes, ma'am, the value-added tax.
At the end of the day, and I would have made a contribution in the House just recently, 12%, when you hear it right off the bat, you're thinking, this is huge. We would have already had the 7.5%, and we added to that.
Right. So just to be clear, the 60% is the increase. It's just the rate of the increase from 7.5 to 12.
Okay.
Sorry.
So at the end of the day, what we're saying is 12% isn't just in isolation. We're not adding 12% to what it is that you pay just because. There is a reason and a purpose. The Minister of Finance, the Honorable K. Peter Turnquist, Deputy Prime Minister, would have indicated that at the end of the day, they would have gone to the table, they would have looked at what was before us, and they had to make a decision. Was it an easy one? No, it wasn't. Was it the right one? I do believe, from what we are aware of, that it was. At the end of the day, there is no good in taxing our people and the results being the same before the taxes. I made in my contribution, and I'll say this again. The question isn't necessarily why 12%. The question we should be asking is ourselves, what does the 12% bring? And that is something that I stand firm on in support of this year's budget. There are many things in that budget that we can take advantage of as ordinary citizens. We cannot let the masses determine whether or not we actually know what's in that budget from just saying 12% everywhere we go. Take a look at it. Find out how it can benefit you. Is it a sacrifice to some degree? Yes, it is. But at the end of the day, I would have made mention that we can go into any other country, particularly the Florida market, and we spend and we provide that country with billions of dollars on an annual basis.
And just to be clear, Madam PS, I'm only asking on behalf of the people if they can count on you to do your part in holding the government accountable to living up to the promise that you have made.
It's something we have to do.
Okay.
It is something we have made the promise that this is going to make a difference. Based on what is now before us, it is the right decision. Do we stand by it? Yes, we do. Do we want the best from it? Yes, we do. But the people of the Bahamas, in the end, still have the decision to make. And if they're not satisfied, we'll be satisfied with what they're satisfied with.
Madam PS, thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts on our program. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us at Nation Building, it's certainly been a pleasure for us to bring this broadcast to you. I want you to stay tuned for the next edition of Nation Building. And as always, have a great week.